Pleasing the Dark Gods is often a thankless task. You give, and they take and take. Yet, today we take a look at career professionals, the Bloodwind Legion, or as you may know them, the slaves to Darkness Spearhead. Who are the Bloodwind Legion, and are they the Spearhead box for you?
They will see me. Even if I have to damn a million souls, they will see me!
Chaos Lord Ares Bloodwrath. The Bloodwind Legion is a very well-rounded spearhead and definitely one of the most sustainable armies throughout any battlefield. Apparently, the Dark Gods have not yielded under the onslaught of the Stormcast Eternals, and nothing demonstrates chaos resilience like the Bloodwind Legion. This spearhead consists of the following models: 1 Chaos Lord as your general, 1 Chaos Chariot, 2 units of 5 Chaos Warriors each, 5 Chaos Knights. Together, they make for a versatile army with much to offer to any playstyle and fittingly proving your worth to the Dark Gods, be that Siege, Swanesh, Nurgle or Khorne, can really help you shape the battle in a way that favors you the most. Getting started with the army composition, I want to mention that when you play the Bloodwind Legion, you immediately feel like you have a free hand on the battlefield. Whether your opponent is running large numbers or a few beefier units, your servants of chaos are ready to respond. Coming up first, we have the Chaos Warriors. They are 2 identical units of 5 fighter models in each. Each model can move up to 5 inches, has a health characteristic of 2 and rolls a save on 3+. That is pretty good. They have a single rune-etched halberd with 2 attacks each. The attacks hit and wound on 3+, and have 1 rend and 1 damage characteristic. The Chaos Warriors make for solid infantry units, but get even better when you factor in their passive ability. Bringers of Desolation adds 1 to the wound rolls for combat attacks made against a unit or units that is or are contesting an objective that you do not control, making them a formidable force in your Dark Gods infantry vanguard, equipped with the tools necessary to pry away any objective from an overly keen opponent. Next, we have the Chaos Knights, and they are beefy boys as well. A model has 4 health characteristic, can move up to 10 inches, they save on 3+, and have 1 control score. As to their attack profiles, the Chaos Knights rely on a cursed lance that has 3 attacks and hits and wounds on 3+. The lance also has 1 rend and 1 damage characteristic and will add +1 rend and +1 damage to your attacks after you have charged with these units. The Chaos Knight steeds, trampling hooves, are there to also add to the damage output with their 2 attacks and hit on 5+. If they wound on 3+, they contribute 1 damage to the damage pool. Now, this is a great unit, and they can do so much in battle. It's almost unfair when you consider a unit like the Free Guild Cavaliers, who are practically the same unit, but don't get extra rend after charging, nor do they hit or wound on 3+. It's really difficult to hold your own against these guys, and the Chaos Cavalry is just going to take 1 unit on the battlefield after another, especially if you have something like Blessing of Khorne on top. Next we have our hero, our general, enter the Chaos Lord. He's wielding a Reaper Blade which has 5 attacks, hits and wounds on 3+, and has a rend characteristic of 1 +2 damage. He also has Crit Mortal. Now, he's a bit on the squishy side with just 6 health and standard 3+ save. Okay, now for the good stuff. Chaos Lord has 2 abilities. One is Favored of the Pantheon, which allows him to trigger the Eye of the Gods for himself on 4+ roll. Then he has the Ironwield Champion, which basically allows him to pick a friendly unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit, meaning the Chaos Lord, to be the target and roll a die. On 2+, add 1 to the hit rolls for attacks made by that target unit in this phase. This is a passive ability you're going to use twice per battle round, and I don't need to tell you how tremendous this can be. All you need to do is make sure that your Chaos Lord survives, and he's going to do plenty of damage himself. The Chaos Chariot looks awesome, but I have had so many games where it just failed, and everyone was getting a little exasperated at how underwhelming such a big model can be. Now, let me tell you, there is nothing underwhelming about the Chaos Chariot. It has 6 attacks on its Chaos Warflail that hit and wound on 3+ and do 1 damage. No rend sadly, but it's still plenty of attacks that are fairly easy to hit and wound. Next you have the Driver's Slashing Whip for 2 attacks that hit and wound on 4+, 1 damage still, and finally you have the Warhorse's Trampling Hooves that do 4 attacks and hit on 5+ and wound on 3+ and do 1 damage. Just keep in mind that you cannot modify your companion's attacks, so any buff that may apply, in my experience, does not apply to the companion. Now, there is the Swift Death Charge Phase ability, which basically means that if you do end up using a charge, any unit that is within 1 inch of the Chaos Chariot is going to end up receiving a D3 mortal damage. Plus, the Chaos Chariot can benefit tremendously from any effect provided by the Eye of the Gods or by the Chaos Lord's awesome combat phase buff. So the Bloodwind Legion is only going to make use of a single battle threat, the Eye of the Gods, which can be used at the end of any turn, meaning twice per battle round. To use it, declare, pick one of the following friendly units to use this ability. A unit that is contesting an objective not controlled by your opponent and is not in combat. A unit that destroyed an enemy unit this turn. You roll once on the Eye of the Gods table for that unit and grant the passive ability corresponding to the roll to that unit. Now, these abilities are passive and they stack up, meaning you can field a true champion of chaos after only a few rounds of battle. You can further give yourself a really early boost by planning for fulfilling the Eye of the Gods requirement and also using the Regiment ability, the Dread Banner. As you can see, there are 4 effects that you can apply to an eligible unit, and each of them is quite worthwhile. You get a Ward 6+, you can add 1 to the run rolls for said unit, you can subtract 1 from the wound rolls for attacks that target this unit, or you can add 1 to the rend characteristics of this unit's melee weapons. However, if you roll 1, you will fail to trigger any blessing. This happened 3 times back to back in a recent game I had, and I was so sad. I was so resigned. I knew in that moment that I was not a good follower of chaos, for the gods have snubbed me like that. But I kept going anyway. Next up, we have the Regiment abilities. As per usual, you're going to pick one of 2. In this case, you can choose between the Dread Banner or Fierce Conquerors. The Dread Banner will allow you to pick a friendly Chaos Warriors or Chaos Knights unit and immediately roll for the Eye of the Gods table for that unit. This is pretty good, but you can only use it once per battle at the start of the first battle round. So, in other words, you need to pick this Regiment ability and use it immediately thereafter. You also have to plan which unit is going to benefit the most and account for your opponent's turn sequence, because if they go before you, they can target an already buffed unit. Then you have Fierce Conquerors. Fierce Conquerors will let you add 3 to the control scores of friendly Chaos Warriors units, which is also viable and will make it much easier to contest points. Now, it's really a toss-up what you end up going for, but my logic is that if I can get the right buff, my Chaos Warriors are probably not going to have much trouble clearing up an objective and therefore prevailing in controlling that objective anyway. On the flip side, having 3+ to the 2 units of Chaos Warriors control score feels like a very decent way to boost your map presence and make your opponents think twice before they contest an objective against you. Finally, we have enhancements. Khorne will let you add 1 to the rend characteristic of your Chaos Lord. Mark of Tzeentch will let you pick a friendly unit on the battlefield. You cannot pick your general, however. Then you can move that unit from the battlefield and set it up again wholly within 6 inches of your general and more than 6 inches from all enemy units. It cannot use move abilities for the rest of the phase, and this is practically a deployment. This is once per battle during your movement phase, and I can definitely see the value of having a unit of Chaos Warriors flanking to secure a distant objective, only to quickly rush back to your general's aid if necessary. Next, you have the Mark of good old grandfather Nurgle, who let you subtract 1 from the wound rolls for combat attacks that target your general. Last but hardly least, Mark of Swanesh will let your general have the Strike First ability as a passive throughout the entire battle. Overall, the enhancements you may pick are pretty versatile and they give you a lot of flexibility in choosing how you will fight your battle and what role your general will play on the battlefield. I personally really enjoy Mark of Zinch because I appreciate the added mobility and the versatility that it brings to the battlefield. Akshi or Gyron? This is the question, but then again it really isn't. As servants of chaos, we obviously want less vegetation and more desolation. Akshi is generally a battlefield that is better suited for more aggressive armies for a number of reasons really, but basically the twists all favor aggression. Let the blood flow lets each player on the battlefield score 1 extra victory point at the end of their turn for each enemy unit destroyed in this turn. Also, the underdog is going to get 1 unit frenzied, which means that they add 1 to the hit rolls for combat attacks made by that unit this battle round. So you can really plan for that and say, well, I'll score fewer points this turn because I might get Let the Blood Flow the next one and really boost my performance. Ring of Fire allows the underdog to pick one objective on the battlefield and that objective is no longer controlled or contested by any of the players. On top of that, any units contesting that objective at the end of each turn will suffer a D3 mortal damage. If there is no underdog, then you simply roll off and the victor picks one of the objectives. Bloodmarked allows the underdog to pick one unit in each player's army that is on the battlefield to be bloodmarked. If you slay it, you get 1 extra victory point at the end of the battle round. If there is no underdog, each player will choose and put the blood mark on one unit in the opponent's army. Wreathed in Smoke allows the underdog to pick one objective on the battlefield. This objective is considered wreathed in smoke until the end of the battle round and only unmodified hit rolls of 6 successfully hit for attacks that target a unit contesting that objective. Mount the Attack will grant you an extra victory points for each objective you control at the end of your turn that was previously controlled by your opponent. In addition, the underdog is going to pick one friendly unit to be the Spearhead, and that unit has charge plus 1 damage this battle round. Reclaim Akshi lets the underdog pick 2 objectives on the battlefield. If there is no underdog, each player is going to pick one. Then each player scores 1 extra victory point at the end of their turn. Now, you can say, well, the Bloodwind Legion is actually pretty good at taking objectives, and it's not very likely we're going to be the underdog. Well, to be perfectly honest, I think you should not worry too much about points control because you get a chance to wipe most of your opponent's army, and then you're in a pretty good position overall. I feel that the Slaves to Darkness Bloodwind Legion is a tremendous spearhead. Obviously, I'm reviewing this based on my experience with the box and how it performed against another 4 different armies I have had the chance to play up against. I'm going to refrain from offering you advice whether this box is a top performing army, but my gut tells me yes. Obviously, there have been quite a few interesting additions to the Spearhead range, such as the Goonspite Kids Narrowpack Hunters, or the Slaves to Darkness Dark Off Raiders, or the Orc War Clans Iron Jaws Big Mob. These are quite a bit different, and I think Games Workshop has realized that the format can get a little tangly, a little too focused on melee combat, and so they have created a fun way to liven things up. Anyway, Slaves to Darkness Bloodwind Legion is a top army for me, and I really recommend you, if you worship chaos, to consider snatching it. Interested in finding out whether the Dark Off Raiders are better? Well, just stick around until next week and find out. Thank you for listening through.